Welcome back to Third Base Dugout, episode 86. We are 14 away from the triple digits, and we are 1 week away from opening day. Next Thursday, April 7th, 1 o'clock. I will be glued in front of the TV and not moving the rest of the day. I have no class Thursday nights. I wish I could say that I did that on purpose. However, I unintentionally made my opening day completely free of any activities so that I can just sit down and watch game after game after game. Mike, before I even get to you, go follow us on Twitter at Third Base Dugout. Also follow us on Spotify and download, rate, follow, do the whole kit and caboodle. And then go check us out on YouTube, Dorm Room Sports. You will catch me eating and drinking McDonald's tonight on tonight's episode because I did not have time to eat before class. So go check us out on YouTube, Dorm Room Sports. Click on Third Base Dugout, and you will see each podcast episode on there, which started last week as we announced that. So, Mike, congratulations to your Cardinals today on scoring 29 runs against the Nationals in spring training.
Thanks, man. I'm not going to get too overly excited about it because one is spring training, but then also for the people that don't watch closely, there's still a long-haired guy in our dugout that's the hitting coach named Jeff Albert. Which means that this will probably obviously be the most runs we score, in a given game, which I'm fine with that, right? You don't expect guys to score 29.
Sure.
But at the same time, I will at least look back at this in the middle of the year when, with the offensive firepower that we got, that we're only scoring 2 runs a game, and look back and say, hey, at least we scored 29 in the spring training game.
Yeah, it's always going to be cool to look back on. You put up 15 in the 8th inning against the Nationals' number 1 prospect, and I guess number 2 now that Keibert Ruiz is in there. But Cade Cavalli gave up a 10 spot in 2 1/3.
But speaking of great Cardinal news, the man is back in St. Louis. The man is back in St. Louis.
I don't know how I missed that on the show sheet. I completely forgot to add that.
Okay. I wasn't going to let you forget it.
I know.
Nostalgia, call it what you want it. It is just going to be great to see Pujols back in St. Louis where, he became the legend that he is. So, man, I'm excited. I could really care less. He could go hitless all year, but it would just be great to see, him get in the box and play in front of that crowd in St. Louis. I'm actually going to a game in DC just to be able to see him play one last time in person. That guy, which if he ever heard this, yes, I would fanboy out, but he was a big part of how I approached when I did play. Granted, I didn't play college ball and all the other stuff, but at least for me, what he meant to me as a player was top notch, right?
Of course,
I watching him hit, how he went about it, and then the respect that he had from his peers, that was the thing for me. And what really got me hooked, I know this is not like a Albert Pujols tribute, tears in the eyes moment.
After the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I won't shed a tear, but you know what I mean.
Considering with Albert Pujols, Waino, and Yachty retiring, I mean, you might.
Yeah, man. It's definitely gonna be a lot of changing of the guard, So that's why I'm so geeked about this year, because at least I'll be able to say, Lord willing, that I've been able to see 3 of the greatest, Cardinals for sure, be able to play and go out in that last year. But like I said, with Pujols, when it became a thing, when somebody first introduced me to him as a hitter, and they were like, hey, you got a big lower body, you got to use it like Pujols, I got hooked, right? Seeing how he did it, seeing how he went about it, to see him come back to St. Louis for one more run, one more year. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. The average, when the 3 of them retire, the average age is going to go down by 6 years.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The Cardinals, absolutely. We might be the youngest team in baseball after that, because when you get rid of 3 40-year-olds, right? You get rid of 4 or 3 40-year-olds, it'll be okay.
Oh man, Albert Pujols showed up to spring training a little plump, A little plumper than I had expected out of him. He got a beer gut. He went back home and drank a little beer. Thought he had maybe had a little longer of free agency before he was going to sign. And Cardinals called him up and say, "Hey, we'll give you a year." And he's like, "Oh crap, I was drinking beer." And now here we are. He's going to St. Louis.
Think about the chicken and beer leagues that you might have played in or played against. Like some of those guys could still rake.
Those Dominican leagues, man, I can tell you, they probably. I'm sure that they down some booze before those games.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna be excited, to see him penciled in the lineup opening day, preferably. I think that there's no way that you don't put him in the lineup for opening day, even if it's not a favorable matchup. Or at least the home opener. Yeah,
you got a DH now, which is good. You don't have to take out Goldschmidt or anything. Like,
oh yeah, no. But I'm excited, man, to just be able to see it and to watch. I'll be tuned in to pretty much every game. Yeah. Just being able to see my man, go to work one more time. And I'm gonna throw this out there. I think he gets to 700 this year.
He needs
he's 20. He's 21,
right?
21 away.
Yeah, so
I think he gets to 7.
I think he does too, because with the DH, he'll be playing a lot more than he did last year when he went to LA at the. I think it was after the deadline he got cut by the Angels, right? And then or he got released by the Angels, and then ended up in LA, and he wasn't really playing a lot in LA, but did strike out in the NLCS in that Tyler Matzik inning, but we won't talk about that.
Good. He still has the most prolific playoff home run of all time, where he silenced the crowd.
Yeah, at old Minute Maid.
Yes, Bradley is probably still having nightmares.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Other news around the league before we get into awards predictions. Hunter Greene makes the opening day roster for the Cincinnati Reds. This is long awaited by baseball fans, as he has been that guy that you've seen go viral on social media since he was back in high school, throwing 100 plus and hitting tanks as a shortstop. Now he makes the big league roster. He's going to start on April 10th for the Reds. So it'll be the 4th game of the season. He'll be the number 4 starter for them this year. And it makes the Reds watchable. Like originally they just weren't even watchable. Like Luis Castillo starts maybe were watchable. And if it was anything like the beginning of last year, they're not watchable. But now with Hunter Greene, at least he's electric, and who knows? I highly doubt they'll do it, but given the shape of the Reds lineup right now, maybe he'll DH while he pitches now with the Ohtani rule. Maybe. We'll see. I don't know. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, he was a guy that when he was coming out, especially like kind of catching up on prospects. I'm not saying like I do a nationwide search whatsoever, but as it gets closer to draft day, you start to really see some of the names pop out. Even though he ended up getting drafted by the Reds, he was a guy that I was excited to kind of follow, to see, because he was, a stud pitcher and shortstop, hitting, like you said, hitting tanks, throwing 102, 103. So I'll get a close-up look at him this year from being in the division, but I'm excited. That is a big move for them. Like I said, it's got to have to do something to keep their fan base, engaged, because you're talking about a team that was 2 years ago in the playoffs.
Crazy.
2 years in the playoffs, and they were
right. I think it was in the wild card game against the Braves.
Yeah, and it was like their lineup, what they had was starting to set a trend, at least for you thought, well, hey, if the universal DH comes, like they're going to be super scary. Mm-hmm. But now, you lose a lot of your key pieces. You trade away pitching, and it's not like you're playing in a pitcher-friendly ballpark where some young guys can just kind of get used to being in there.
Yeah, poor guy. Poor Hunter Greene gets a rude awakening being in Great American Ballpark.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know who Hunter Greene is, he was a former first round.
Google him.
Just Google his highlights. It's unbelievable. But he throws triple digits, hit 102, I believe, last year in the minors, and has a wipeout slider, pretty solid changeup, and he is going to be hopefully really good. Obviously, you never know until they pitch in the big leagues, but
Yeah.
Hopefully he'll be really good and might be a part of the future for the Reds. But
Yeah, I was low key surprised that he didn't come up at all last year, really because of the fact that he finished off their spring for them, right? Like he made a couple starts down the stretch of spring training and actually pitched really well, but then to not get the call up all year, I was a little surprised, but I also knew he was coming back off of an injury the year before, so it kind of slowed it down a little bit. But to see this guy, come up, I don't want to give him like a Wander Franco type of hype, but he's that electric when he's on, just to go out there and deal, like I said, 3++ offerings and fastball, slider, changeup that, it can be something to see, when he's out there. So
yeah, absolutely.
this probably be the last compliment I give the Reds for the rest of the year. So take it now.
The last compliment anyone can give the Reds for the rest of the year is
that's very true.
Is they try to escape a 100-loss season. We will get to those season totals though next week, because I know we had said we wanted to do that. At least you said you wanted to do that last week, and we can do that next week when we do the opening weekend preview. We'll get to that later. But this week we're going to do the awards predictions. We do it every year. Last year we did it. Last year our season preview and our awards predictions were I guess in the same episode. So it's nice that we've timed this out so that we can do the season predictions last week. So if you haven't listened or watched that on YouTube, go back, check out who we got to make the playoffs, go to the World Series, win the World Series. And now this week we've got our awards predictions. We got AL and NL MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, and Manager of the Year coming at you. And with that, let's go ahead and roll into it. So, Mike, I will let you go first on these.
Okay.
American League MVP last year, it was Jacob Arski. Oh, wow. It was Shohei Ohtani. I was about to say Jacob deGrom because I was looking at it on the show sheet. Actually, sorry. Before you and I go, I'll say Shelly's as well. Shelly took Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to win the AL MVP. He said he's going to give Shohei Ohtani the Mike Trout treatment by never giving him an MVP before the season. He believes that they're going to do the same thing that they do for Trout and just never give him the MVP. So he's going to go Vladdy Jr. And while you go with yours, I'm going to change my light.
Fair. I'm going to go with the guy who I felt got robbed last year, and that is Vladdy as well. I understand what Ohtani did was special, two-way player, yada, yada, yada. But Vladdy might be the best pure hitter, best overall hitter in all of baseball, right? So when you factor in average, power, clutch, you name it, he's up there. And I think that, coming off of his last 2 seasons where he's been on the cusp of it, I think this is the year that he finally gets the recognition that, he's earned, and he takes home MVP this year. Of course, Ohtani is going to have a lot of hype behind it, to see if he can repeat from last year. But I think that this is the year that Vladdy, kind of shuts the door and kind of, establishes himself as one of the faces of baseball.
All righty. I'm going to go with my yearly pick that never, ever, ever, ever changes. I'm going to go with Mike Trout. This is his comeback year, and I think he will probably win like comeback player of the year if it's not somebody like Trey Mancini again. I think Mike Trout will have that protection in the lineup. You got Rendon finally coming back from injury. They've kind of bolstered that team around. And I think if they're going to contend, I think Mike Trout, let me switch that around. If Mike Trout is healthy, I think they're going to contend. And because of how much they bolstered the pitching staff, the bullpen, they got Ryan Tepera to help with Raisel Iglesias in the bullpen now. And him, Shohei Ohtani, and Anthony Rendon, along with David Fletcher, Jared Walsh, all that great lineup. If with all that protection, I think Mike Trout could have a 345 homer year again, like he did back in 2017. So I'm going to go with Mike Trout. Obviously, my favorite player. Very hard to pick against him, even though his teammate poses a very tough threat, considering he does two things at once. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue against Trout, but it's actually what I enjoy doing a little bit with y'all. Like,
I know.
it's as even when you say, oh, if he's healthy, he can have this. Like, okay, first of all, that's a questionable thing because even though he hasn't been like missing hundreds of games or half of seasons on a regular basis, it's a few things you can count on, with him. He's going to play great. He's going to hit home runs. He's going to make some great catches, but he's also going to be on the injured list at some point or another during the season. Most of the time for about a 6 week
anybody
stretch.
could be at the same time. Like you never know who's going to get injured and who's not.
Right. That's true. But if you look back let's just go back over like the last few years, like it's been a consistent thing where he's going to be out for 6 weeks. Right.
Well,
like
here's the thing though with Trout is like he has a minor injury and they're out of the playoffs. And so they just sit him the rest of the year. Like they always just shut him down because the team around him sucks so bad.
No, like in that part I could agree, but it's also some of that stuff that's beginning of the year, middle of the year. Yes, some of it's freak accident stuff, but he spends a decent amount of time on the IL, right? So that's not to take away from his greatness of what he, the player that he is. Like I said, I don't know. Yes, if he's healthy, he's going to be in that because I think that a lot of it is more narrative than anything.
It's crazy to me. I feel like by the end of his career, he's going to get the Griffey treatment where, like, obviously Griffey wasn't unanimous Hall of Famer because of the injuries late in his career. I feel like Mike Trout's going to get the Griffey treatment by, like, yeah, you remember his career for being great. And then, like, the second thought is, oh, he had a lot of injuries. Like, that's going to suck when Mike Trout retires and everyone just looks back and he's like, yeah, he had a lot of injuries. Like, that's going to suck because he's like one of the greatest players that we know. And yet we're going to think of him as like, oh, he couldn't stay healthy. That's crazy.
Now, I will say that. Excuse me.
It's all right. It's late at night. I understand.
Old man bedtime.
I'm boring you that much.
No, it's just old man bedtime.
Pick in, Mike.
How far are we in?
We're only one pick in.
Oh, okay, yeah, because it's going to be Albert Pujols for the rest of these. No,
but, no, like for NL Cy Young.
Yeah, just rack it up every award. No, like with Trout, and it was back to the Griffey point. He wasn't a unanimous Hall of Famer because somebody is a weirdo. Let's just put it nicely. There's no way, regardless of the injuries and the career that he put up, that he shouldn't have been a unanimous Hall of Famer. But of course, it's that one, guy that's sitting in his basement that has a pick, and he's like, well, if Ted Williams wasn't let's just modernize it, and be honest about it. So maybe Ted Williams wasn't the greatest example of it, but it's like, you see what I'm saying? Yeah. Right. It's one player that they felt like should have been unanimous, but since he wasn't, nobody else, ever should get it. And that's just stupid to me.
I think I know the answer to this, and just give me a one-word answer, and then we will drop the Mike Trout argument.
Thank you.
If his career stays on this trajectory of obviously he's great, you can argue he's the best player in baseball, and some even argue that he's the best player in baseball history. I'm not getting into that right now, and nor should we the week before the season. If his career stays on this trajectory, is he a unanimous Hall of Famer?
Kind of handicapped me there saying one word answer, but yeah.
Okay.
Right. I feel like you just wanted me to say yes.
That's all I had. I think I knew the answer because he's on pace for like 600 home runs, but like at the same time, like some people are like, okay, injuries, but like he can't stay healthy. Like, you know how it is.
No, like on the career path that he's on, definitely a Hall of Famer. Like,
oh, no doubt. Yeah. He could probably already be in the Hall of Fame right now.
Yeah. Because he's ridiculous. A lot of
like 300 home runs and
right. Yeah. A lot of what the Hall of Fame voting is, it looks at a lot of the
not good.
It looks like it has a lot to do with the accolades that you put up, so even in his beginning stretch where he won so many MVPs and finished second place in so many votings, that already put him on that trajectory.
Yep.
That at that point it was just like, hey, just play out the rest of your career and put up some decent numbers or great numbers, and you're going to get in. But yes, to answer your question, on his current trajectory, he'll be a Hall of Famer.
Okay. All right. National League MVP, Jacob Selden. Our co-host went with Juan Soto. I like the pick. Mike, you go ahead.
Albert Pujols. No, okay, I'm joking.
I was about to say.
I'm joking, but I am going to say with the Cardinal though, Paul Goldschmidt. Paul Goldschmidt is going to.
That's not the Cardinal that I thought you were going to go with.
Arenado, what is a more
No, I wasn't even going to think him either.
Really?
I was going to say Tyler O'Neill, if anything.
Fair.
I think Tyler O'Neill is a stud.
He is. I'm glad to see him finally put everything together. But I'll digress about that later. Goldie is my MVP pick for this year. With what we have in our lineup, and he's been a model of consistency over his career. But now you put him in a situation where this is going to be their second year with Arenado in the lineup. O'Neill's coming to his own. Carlson starting to turn the corner here a lot more in spring training. You got a lot of pieces around him that is going to allow for his numbers to look a lot better. Ali Marmol, the new manager that came in from Mike Schilt, has already kind of said they're going to go. He's going to flex the lineup a little bit, but also at the same time, it's going to kind of get back to some of those things that made the Cardinals baseball great. Small ball hitting and running, guys being in motion. So I think that with all those things in play and the speed that we have and the guys to hit the ball, that's going to be able to bolster Goldie's numbers. So I will say Goldschmidt as MVP.
All right. I just wrote down my pick, and I actually think I'm going to take it back. Wow. I have 3 or 4 guys in my head that I think could be, and I've toyed around with this all night. I was thinking about it earlier, and really the 4 that are in my head, at least right now, are Ronald Acuna, Juan Soto, Jacob deGrom, and Mookie Betts. Here's my argument against each one. Mookie Betts has 8 other players in his lineup that could be MVP candidates. So if you just take that, they're going to take votes away from him. DeGrom hasn't been healthy in 3 years, or for a full season at least. Ronald Acuna is coming off an ACL injury. No idea what he's going to be like. And Juan Soto plays for the Nationals, who might win 65 games this year. I think I'm going to go actually with Acuna here. I think he has the smallest question mark of the 4. So I'm going to go with Ronald Acuna to have a big comeback. I've got both my MVPs having comeback years, coming off of injuries. So, but I think Ronald Acuna is just so talented, and I think he's going to will them to that NL East title. Yeah. So Acuna is my pick. I think I picked him again last year as well, and obviously didn't work out so well. Turned his ACL in May, but all right, AL Cy Young. Jacob really gave me a head scratcher on this one. I don't know if you looked at that text the same way that I did. I went down each list of names, read them out loud, and then went back to the top and saw this. I'm like, what? He goes with Jose Berrios as his AL Cy Young, the current number 2 for the Blue Jays. He is below Kevin Gausman on the Blue Jays totem pole currently. Obviously, if he has a breakout season, could change. But yeah, Jose Berrios is his Cy Young candidate.
The crazy part is I'm actually not mad at it, because
I'm not terribly mad at it either.
That's the guy that first came to mind for me too.
It just threw me so far for a loop. I went. My brain got just jumbled. Yeah. Just looking at that.
Obviously the easy pick in some ways would be to go with Gary Cole, but I think that Jose Berrios is going to have a dynamite year. right? Like he started to really turn that corner. And he was the guy that even if you didn't get Kevin Gausman, you would have felt perfectly okay with him being your ace, going into this year.
Yep.
So now, you slide him back one slot. There aren't many number twos that are better than him in any rotation, in my opinion, especially in the American League. So I'm not surprised at that pick, and I would actually agree with him. Because also what you bolster is
Wait, are you picking Berrios too?
I am.
Holy
I am. That
Oh.
was the first thing that came to mind for me, because of all the things I just mentioned, but then also you throw a guy at third base and Matt Chapman, who's arguably one of the best third base defenders, to go out with the rest of that defense there. And he's a ground ball pitcher, right? Like he's going to keep the ball down. And on that left side between Bo Bichette, who's by all accounts improving, like is he the best defender at shortstop? No, right? But he's improving. But you also give him a little bit of cushion with a guy like Matt Chapman who has the range and stuff to play there. I can see him being very, very good this year.
Y'all are wilding. Y'all are wilding.
All right, go ahead and give us the cliche pick. Here we go.
I'm not actually. I'm not going terribly cliche. I'm actually gonna go with a guy who has been really good, but has always flown under the radar. Just never really seems to get the votes. I'm gonna go with Lance Lynn, the overwhelming number one for the White Sox this year. Now that Carlos Rodon was with the Giants, and I think that team is going to be really, really good. They're back healthy. Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert are back in the lineup. Made a couple different moves. And I think with that bullpen to help as well, I think Lance Lynn's going to have a really, really good year. I think he's going to stay around that 2.5, 2.7 mark that he was at for a lot of last year before he tailed off a little bit at the end. And he was starting to get some Cy Young votes, but they just never, ever, ever called his name in the voting. For some odd reason, he's always been so good and just never gets the acknowledgments that he deserves. So I'm going to go with Lance Lynn. Hate to do it because it's the White Sox, but I enjoy watching Lance Lynn. We are rolling with the NL Cy Young, and I know you're not going to give the cliche answer for this one. I know you're not.
No. But going back to your AL Cy Young, Lance Lynn was like second on my list. For what that worth, for what's that worth, for whatever that's worth. NL Cy Young, I think I picked this guy last year, and I'm gonna stick with it because I feel like he has one in his future sooner rather than later, and that's Walker Buehler.
I thought about it.
I mean, the guy he's filthy, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and it's every pitch is a potential strikeout pitch. You don't want to get to two strikes with him. And he low-key carried their rotation last year. I mean, he finished with a 2.47 ERA, the third lowest in the National League, behind Corbin Burns and Max Scherzer. But, you get that guy going out there, and it's going to be tough to kind of like pick against him right now for as good as he was last year.
Yeah, I can see it. I can definitely see it.
So I'm sorry. Just throw this out there. Last year he went 16-4 with a 2.47 ERA. That wins a Cy Young in just about every other year except for when you have Corbin Burns have the year that he had. So like I said, I feel like he's knocking on that door and is about to enter his name into the best pitcher in baseball category, conversation, and you could really make a strong argument for him there.
Yeah. I toyed around with, again, a couple different names. I toyed around with Buehler, toyed around with DeGrom, toyed around with Corbin Burns again, toyed around with Rodon. I mean, being in a new place in a very pitcher-friendly ballpark in Oracle Park, that definitely helps things. But when you're in the division with the Dodgers and the Padres, it does not help things. And then I toyed around with Woodruff and Max Fried. I had a lot of different names go into this, and I didn't really make up my mind until you convinced me. I'm going to go with Walker Buehler as well. Julio Urias also came into my mind. He has just been Mr. Consistent for the Dodgers, but I don't know if he's good enough consistently to do it. Like I think he's a solid like 3.2 ERA guy, but I think Walker Buehler is that 2.8 ERA guy that like is just better than Julio Urias. And if Buehler has the same kind of season that he's had, the dude doesn't lose ball games. And I know how much the voters value wins and ERA. Walker Buehler doesn't lose games. He has like 15 wins every year, and he has less than 5 losses like every year. It's absurd. It helps when you're playing with the Dodgers lineup, but at the same time, like you have to be legit to get that many wins to your ledger. And he just hasn't gotten the recognition because of how good that rotation in that lineup is. I mean, they're just so stacked all the way around. So I'm going to go with Walker Buehler as well. I think he finally gets that Cy Young this year.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. AL Rookie of the Year. Shelley went with Bobby Witt, which is a good pick. He is showing some solid stuff in spring training right now for the Royals. Mike, go ahead with yours.
I'm going to go with Julio Rodriguez of the Mariners.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to get an early call up, and he's going to be probably the difference maker in that lineup. To the point where I think his call up will be early enough, probably due to some unfortunate situation by somebody else that opens up a time for him to come up. But I think that it'll also be his impact will be great enough that they will move Mitch Haniger at the trade deadline to allow him to fully get comfortable in that spot. That's how good of a hitter I think that he is, and how much of an impact he'll have on that lineup. Because right now, you got Winker, Kelenic, and right now Haniger probably
Winker
outfield. Right. You could, but also if you look at what they also have everywhere else for the most part, you could make – I'm sorry, dang, I forgot all about it. Kyle Lewis.
Yeah, I also forgot he existed.
Yeah, my bad. I felt bad for overlooking him, but
in all reality, if there's one person that I would bet on to take out of that lineup, it's going to be Jared Kelenic. I think if anything, he goes to the bench because of just how absurdly bad he was when he came up last year. Yeah, he batted 170 last year.
Right, but also you look inside the numbers a little bit deeper. Like he had a really good September. So you say, hey, if you can carry those things over, then we're going to be okay. But I think that, like I said, Julio Rodriguez's impact in that lineup will be so pronounced that you could argue trading Mitch Haniger to bolster up some other areas, for you to be able to get some quality pieces back. But that's my pick.
We do know injuries plague almost every single team at some point in the season, so I'm sure Julio will get the call up at some point early. I'm going to go with the homer pick, but it's not the homer pick that you think. I'm not going to go with Spencer Torkelson. I'm going to go with his counterpart, Riley Green. I truly, 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 deep down in my heart, think that Riley Green's going to bat 300 this year. I've been watching a lot of the Tigers spring training games, and then generally they have him batting 7th and Torkelson batting 8th. And he's usually batting behind Scope. So Scope will get a base knock. Then Riley Green just gets I think he's seeing over 3.5 pitches per at bat, or excuse me, it might be over 4 pitches per at bat this spring right now. It's like something insane where like he's just seeing a lot of pitches, and then he's just putting good swings on baseballs. And he's got like 9 hits and like 24, 25 at bats this spring. Been doing fantastic. And I mean, in his 2 at bats today, hit a single and a double. And that convinced me for tonight's podcast that I think he'll win the Rookie of the Year. Although I hope Torkelson is really good as well. I think Torkelson can hit 20, 25, maybe even 30 home runs this year. But I think Riley Green will bat 300 with 15 to 20 home runs, and I think he can he can push that rookie of the year.
Fair.
Yeah. National League Rookie of the Year. Shelley went with Hunter Green, which is not a bad pick, considering he is making the opening day roster and he's going to be the number 4 starter for the Reds. And there are going to be a lot of eyes on him. So if he does well, always going to be a good thing. Mike.
Yeah. So I'm going to stick with a pitcher, but it's not going to be Hunter Green. Edward Cabrera from the Marlins. His stuff is just as electric as Hunter Green. And I think that this will be a good showcase for him, going in with the rest of that rotation, like those young guys. And I think what you'll probably see from them, which is why I picked them to make the playoffs last week.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the things that you're going to see from those guys is probably going to be that one-upsmanship where, and Brian, you know it from playing ball, where whether it's in a drill or in a game or in a series of games, you have a teammate that goes out there and does something and you want to be able to come back and say, hey, I one up you, right?
Yep.
So even that was back in high school when you was at Lee Davis, and it was like, oh, this, somebody else pitched against Henrico last time and it was like, oh, I struck out 14. He's like, okay, well, I'm going to go get 15, right? Yep. You have that thing that drives you. And I think that entire pitching staff, with as young and as competitive as they are, everybody's going to try to go out and one up each other. And I think that that's only going to elevate Edward Cabrera's status and get him, the Rookie of the Year this year.
All right. I'm actually going to stay with the Marlins, but I'm going to go with a hitter. I'm going to go with Jesus Sanchez. I think he's going to be starting in the outfield for them. I believe in right field. Could maybe start in center. But watching his swing, follow a couple Marlins guys on Twitter with our Third Base Dugout account, and I see these videos of Jesus Sanchez's swing. This guy might hit 40 home runs this year. He has absurd power. And starting in the opening day lineup, that ridiculous power plant in Miami, hey, why not? The balls like to fly out of right field there. And so I'll take Jesus Sanchez to bring home the Rookie of the Year there.
Not a bad one.
All right. AL Manager of the Year. Shelley went with the homer pick. Alex Cora, probably not a bad idea. Who are you going to go with the AL Manager of the Year?
Albert Pujols. Oh, wait, you said AL. My bad. Real quick, though, I think Scott Service won it last year? Did he? Did he win it last year?
Either him or why is it drawing a blank on me? The Blue Jays manager. Who did win? Let's see. Who won the 2021 AL Manager of the Year? Was Dusty Baker.
That's true. He did.
That's crazy.
So which makes this Scott Service pick a whole lot easier to make.
Never mind. Kevin Cash won it.
He did.
This was so Baseball America released their own MLB Manager of the Year, and that was Dusty Baker. But MLB's awards for AL Manager of the Year went to Kevin Cash.
Yeah. So I'm going to double up on my pick because I believe I picked Scott Service last year as well, because I said that the Mariners would make the playoffs and that with that he would be the AL Manager of the Year. And I'm going to stick to that. Simply, if he gets it, not just squeaking into the playoffs, but with the season they had last year, if they build off of that and win that division, make the playoffs, he'll be Manager of the Year. So I'm going to go Scott Service.
All right, I'm going to actually roll with the easy pick here. I'm going to go with Charlie Montoyo, Blue Jays manager. I don't know why his name was escaping my mind earlier, but I had to go back and look at my sheet. I'm going to go with Charlie Montoyo. I think with that roster, I think they have a good chance to win the most games in baseball this year. And if they do, I don't see why he doesn't get the credit he deserves for turning that franchise around. So I'm going to go with Montoyo. And now for NL Manager of the Year, Shelley's going with a first-year manager in the NL. A guy who was in the AL and is now managing his first year in the NL. He's going to go with Bob Melvin, who left the A's to go to the Padres, which is not a bad pick. And in hindsight, is probably the best move Bob Melvin could have made, considering what they just did to the A's franchise.
Yeah,
going to San Diego with a lot of talent. He's doing well for himself right now. So who is your pick?
I'm going to go another first-year manager. Actually, a complete first-year manager.
Mm-hmm. I already know.
This is when I drop my homer pick in there and say Albert Pujols.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Oli Marmol. I think that the Cardinals, yes, it's going to sound biased, but it's also some fact in there. I think that they, top to bottom, especially in that division, they're probably the most, I wouldn't say probably, they are the most complete team in that division, right? Like Milwaukee has the pitching, but offensively and defensively, it's the Cardinals, who are the superior team there. And I think that with the fresh manager coming in, a guy who's a little bit more player manager, or player friendly towards, his guys, the respect they have for him, I think they're going to want to go out and prove that he was the right guy to come in after, Schultz abrupt firing. Then I think that's going to kind of light a fuse for them, and he's going to, be manager of the year.
All right. I can see that. Not many people are expecting him to win the division in his first year. So if he does, I think that warrants it. Which in all reality, me saying that should mean that I am going to pick him as well, but I'm not, because I have the Cardinals winning the division. I am, at least I think I do. Did I? I did. Yeah. Okay. No, I took the Brewers. Whoops.
It's okay.
Sorry.
I forgive you. Bro.
Sorry. I'm going to go with the guy who just signed a 3-year extension to stay with his ball club. I'm going to go Dave Roberts. I think it's the easy pick here. The NL is very. Actually, let me put it this way. The NL East has 2 teams that are going to dogfight for the top, and they're going to take wins off of each other. The NL Central is going to have 2 teams that are going to dogfight for the top. They're going to take wins off each other. The Padres do not have enough to take the wins off of the Dodgers, especially not with Tatis at the beginning. I don't see the Dodgers coming close to not winning 100 games. And if they get to that triple-digit mark, I think Dave Roberts wins Manager of the Year in the NL, because I think you're going to see the Braves probably win 92, 93 games. You're going to see the Mets win probably somewhere around 90. You're going to see the Cards and the Brewers probably around 90 themselves. And then I think the Dodgers are just going to stand out above everyone else with near 100 wins. And the Giants lost Posey and Chris Bryant, so they're probably not going to be as good as they were. Obviously, the Diamondbacks and the Rockies just suck, and the Padres don't have Tatis for the first bit of the season. So I think the Dodgers are just going to feast, and Roberts gets that Manager of the Year.
So here's the thing, though. I think that.
I see what you're saying. I know what you're going to say, because the amount of talent on the roster should not warrant a Manager of the Year. But I think that there's going to be so many other people taking stuff away from each other that, like, you could say the Phillies somehow win the NL East, then obviously I think Girardi would probably get Manager of the Year. But it's just not going to happen. The Mets and the Braves are just too talented for the Phillies to win the division. So that's going to split between the Braves and the Mets getting award voting, probably.
You're really high on the Mets.
I speak things before opening day because you can't count on teams getting injured. If the Mets stay healthy, the Mets will be very damn good.
There's things you can count. Okay, so here's the thing: you can count on Stanton getting injured at some point.
Death, taxes, and the Mets being injured. I understand.
Yes, there's certain things that you can just factor in. Like, okay, it just depends on when Stanton's going to miss these games. It depends on when DeGrom's going to miss these games. Yep. That makes a difference. But going back to the Dodgers, it's more so their roster, so their lineup is so loaded, top to bottom, that it's, you're like, dang, how could you not win? Especially like you said, you mentioned all the stuff in the division, right? Really, they have no clear-cut competition in the division. Nobody picked the Giants to be that good last year, except for a few Giants fans, right? The delusional Giants fans, just like I'm a delusional Cardinal fan at times, right? Those are the ones that picked them to be that good. The Padres without Tatis for the first 3 months, that's going to be, a tough hill to overcome. And then you got the Rockies and the Diamondbacks. They should, by all accounts, win 100-something games, but it's also with the collection of talent that they have and what they've been doing the last few years. I think that kind of takes away from it. It loses some of its luster. When he did it, when it was the first year he was there and he won, okay, cool, right? He did something with this collection of talent. But to me, again, I think a lot of awards for MLB are based on narrative. And the narrative there is not really as intriguing for Dave Roberts, because he has this team. They've won a World Series. They've been in the playoffs. They've been back to the World Series. All those things that says that, hey, they should be a good team. That kind of knocked him, down that peg at least. They would have to do something extraordinary, break the Mariners single season, record for me to be like, oh, he's the manager of the year.
I see it, but if there is one team to completely run away from the rest of the National League, I think it's the Dodgers. And if they are just far and above better than everyone else in the National League record-wise, I just don't see how they don't give it to him. I'm more so just trying to think in the minds of the writers. I would never give Dave Roberts the manager of the year, because he's got 15 All-Stars on his roster. It's like when NBA creates super teams. It's like we literally have a super team in the Dodgers, and they have won one World Series while the super team has been together. Yeah. But I just think in terms of the writers, if there is one team that is just far and above have a better record than the rest of the National League, I don't see how they don't give it to them.
So even though I didn't pick this guy to win it, let's just go down a small rabbit hole and say that the Marlins actually do end up winning that division.
Yeah.
Let's say that happens, but at the same time, the Dodgers still win 100+ games. To me, who did it? Manager years who did more with less.
Yes.
Who overachieved. It's not necessarily about, yes, if you have completely crap talent, the Reds or the Pirates are going to have this year, or the Rockies, so on and so forth. If you win 60 games or 70 games, they expect you to win 60. No, you get no, award trophy for me. But to take a team that has less talent or less pieces perception wise, and you overachieve, that to me is what gets the manager, because you can pinpoint a lot of ways where the manager was the direct influence. Even as from a former, coach, no, I wasn't a big league manager, right? Mm-hmm. But I'll say it a lot. Managers typically don't win you games, but they can definitely lose you a game. It's still up to the players to win it, but the manager's decisions can lose a game for players more than a manager's decision at time can win games for players. But when you look back and you say, or you look forward and say, hey, the Marlins won the division and they were projected to be probably 4th or 5th in that division, I don't see how you run away and not give him the award with that. So
for me, it is impossible to pick the Giants of last year.
Mhm.
to a team that came out of literally nowhere. I mean, the Giants were not supposed to be good. And I think like MLB's projection or like Fangraph's projection of them before the season was like 70, like 73 wins or something like that. And all of a sudden they win 95. But, and you can't project that. I mean, you can maybe say it might be like the Cubs this year with the signing of Seiya Suzuki and Marcus Stroman. Probably not. No, they just don't have enough. Could be the Marlins. They have a lot of young talent, but again, they have a lot of young talent. There's so many wild cards there. I mean, the Phillies, I think, are over projected just about every single year. They just kind of underperform because of their pitching staff. Nationals aren't going to do it. The Reds aren't going to do it. Pirates aren't going to do it. And so that leaves you with the Padres, Giants, and that's it. Like, it's so hard to pick who is going to be that team that just vastly outperforms their projections. And so obviously we can guess, but we're going to be wrong, most likely.
I mean, you'll probably be wrong, but
yeah, well,
yeah.
It's very hard to be right when you're giving predictions because there's so much uncertainty during the season. The only time that I will boast that I was correct was when the Marlins made the postseason in 2020. That is the only time that I will boast that I was correct because I predicted that before the season, and no one expected. I think they were supposed to win like 40% of their games, and they made the postseason. But
and like I said, no, I agree, and that's part of what makes this fun is that where you rack your brain of like, hey, you got this great thought behind it, and then you're like, oh, it fell flat on his face, or hey, I might have a chance here, to be right in a prediction. So I get it. Like I said, I just look at, again, it's for me a lot of what I've noticed about baseball awards, or really just any sport award, is the narrative that goes behind it. Who did more with less, at times determining MVP, or as a manager or coach of the year, who really surpassed any expectation. Like the expectation for the Dodgers is to win that division and to win a ton of baseball games. So now you follow that up on the backside and say, oh, he did it. So now let's, he did exactly what he was supposed to do with that roster and that talent. So like I said, I'm not knocking Dave Roberts. I think that he's a great manager. Obviously won a World Series, but I think that and that's in this case going into the year, I can't pick him to be the manager of the year with the roster he has and what they're expected to do anyway. If they meet the expectations, all you did was simply reach your benchmark, not necessarily something that surpassed it that separates you.
let me ask you something.
Mm-hmm.
The team that won the World Series last year, the Atlanta Braves.
Mm-hmm.
What is underperforming? Or actually, let me put this way. What is underperforming for Brian Snitker?
Going into this year?
Mm-hmm.
Underperforming would be
Actually, you know what? Let me switch that around. What is overperforming for him? I mean, they won the division. They won the World Series.
Okay, so not that I'm trying to skate past the question, but I also think that it's very difficult to put that expectation or to put that type of question around a guy who just won it, right? Because now you say that anything less than, at least for 1 year, you get a pass in a sense as far as the expectation to a degree, because it's anything, you can easily say anything less than another World Series is a failure. You could easily say that for Brian Snitker, right? Just like after Dave Roberts won, anything less, they could have said anything less than a World Series for the Dodgers was a disappointment. But to underachieve, to go back to like your original question for a minute, to underachieve for the Braves would be not making the playoffs this year. It's not even saying that they have to win another World Series or another division. It's simply getting back to the playoffs because you just were there last year and you won the World Series. So not making it back to the playoffs would be an underachievement.
Do you think winning the World Series last year and winning the AL East last year handily puts him out of the manager of the year race this year from a practical standpoint?
No, I don't think it does, because the manager of the year award, just like the rest of these that we named, are all regular season. So it wasn't that Atlanta just had this dynamite regular season. They got hot at a good time, and the division was relatively weak, so they were able to get into the playoffs, obviously do what they did. But you flip that and you say Brian Snicker goes out and wins 100 games with this team. Yeah, that's very much a consideration for manager of the year, because like I said, their expectation from last year, and then it's year over year. What did you improve, or what did you, how did you guys get better? That will play a part into it for me, as opposed to Dave Roberts, whose team won 100 and some games last year, and kind of went that way.
I'm going to love the narrative this year of, the Braves lost Freddie Freeman. Brian Snicker's doing a great job with this team. Well, they also got Matt Olson in return.
Right.
Like,
right.
They're going to say that so many times at the end of the year. Like, the Braves are going to be in first of the division by 3-4 games. They're going to be like, Brian Snicker's doing a great job because he lost Freddie Freeman. So much uncertainty with this team. Like, no, not really, because they got the next best option at first base.
Yeah, no, and I agree, that, it's not like he's having to start all the way over with some rookie at first base or some unproven guy over there, in the rest of that lineup. But like I said, I think that for him, it's, if they have a much better regular season, definitely gets consideration, because where they played their best was in the playoffs. It wasn't like they just, like I said, just ran away with their division and they were looked at as an afterthought in the playoffs. They were like, they'll probably be out in the first round, or maybe they might, squeak past this one, but they're not going to go much further than that. But then they turned and, won a World Series. So he's not disqualified from it.
Yeah. Matt Olson is one of my sleeper MVP picks, by the way. He's in a much more hitter-friendly ballpark. If he puts up the numbers that he did in Oakland, in Atlanta, but accounted for a hitter-friendly ballpark, that adds a couple more home runs, may add a little more to the average, more RBIs. All of a sudden, that looks like an MVP season.
I think what's probably going to hurt him is a slow start. I think he's going to be pressing too much. I think he's going to try to press too much. One, because for all intended purposes, he's replacing a franchise icon over there, in Freddie Freeman. So now he's going to be trying to go out, and every swing is going to be trying to hit a home run and prove, hey, no, like I'm just as good as Freddie, or if not better at this stage of my career, and, love me for me type of thing. I think that may be something he's pressing on. And the fact that, he knows that they're going to be in a national spotlight a lot more than he was in Oakland, because of the fact that they just won a World Series. So now you turn that around and, have to play under those lights every time. It's going to be a lot more scrutinized, because every time he has a bad game, there's going to be some weird pundit that's like, Matt Olson went 0 for 3 against this pitcher, but Freddie Freeman went 2 for 3 against this pitcher in his career. Like, it's going to be some weirdo like that doesn't really ever give it a fair shake and let him be him. But I think that, as the season goes on, he's going to get better. But I think that, he might have a rough start pressing to start off.
I'm going to change my MVP pick.
Okay, go to Matt Olson. He's still not going to be Goldie.
I'm going to go to Matt Olson. And that's where I'm going to end the show. That is all we got for you this week.
I like the way you just dropped the mic right there. That was impressive.
Yeah.
Good move.
Veteran move. We're 86 episodes and we're at veteran move now.
I felt like you felt a rabbit hole coming up, so you was like, let's detour before I get there.
Well, we were already down the rabbit hole. We finished with Manager of the Year a while ago. So that's all we got for you this week. Make sure you go follow us on Twitter at Third Base Dugout. Follow, download, subscribe on Spotify as well. And then go subscribe to us on YouTube. Dorm Room Sports under that. If you're watching this on YouTube, you already know it. But if you're listening to it on Spotify, go to YouTube, type in Dormer Sports, hit subscribe, go to the subsection that says Third Base Dugout, and go check out our videos. Starting last week, each podcast episode will be going on YouTube, and so that you can watch us bullshit around for hour and a half. So there you have it.
Glitter eyes, full hearts.
Go Tigers,
Go
baby.
Cards.
Go Tigers.